Welcome to EyeCan, a podcast about ophthalmology through a uniquely Canadian lens with Dr. Setareh Ziai and myself, Dr. Guillermo Rocha.
The EyeCan Podcast has been made possible by support from MD Financial Management and Scotiabank, proud financial partners of the Canadian Ophthalmological Society and Canada's ophthalmologists.
We'll share our experiences as ophthalmologists today and tackle some of the challenges we face as healthcare providers. Are you ready, Setareh?
Let's do it, Guillermo.
Let's do it, Setareh.
Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the EyeCan Podcast. On today's show, we have a special treat because I get to interview my dear friend and colleague, Dr. Setareh Ziai. Now, you'll get to hear about the different facets in her life in the next few minutes. To start off and give you an idea, Dr. Ziai is an assistant professor at the Ottawa Eye Institute, and she's also a cornea specialist, probably in the realm of ophthalmology. It's the funnest specialist, I think she'll agree. And we have known each other for many, many years. In fact, I recall seeing her as a very eager, very keen resident when I visited the Ottawa Eye Institute many years ago. And we basically have hit it off as good friends and colleagues. And I have known her to be an incredible person to contribute significant things in the world of ophthalmology and the Canadian Ophthalmological Society. So, Setareh, it's a real pleasure to have this opportunity. It's a very unique opportunity to be able to interview our co-host. Welcome.
Thank you, Guillermo. I feel like I need to do a podcast where I interview you now after this.
Not needed.
Thanks for having me.
That's great. So, Setareh, we run into each other at meetings and we have a chance to talk about certain things. And often we don't want to talk shop, and we talk about our families and we sort of learn about some of the things and the trips that you have done. But one of the things that keeps popping in my feed is this idea and the concept and the aspect of Canadian Women in Medicine, or CWIM. So I'd like to know a little bit more. What is your role in that? How you got involved with it, and why do we need a Canadian Women in Medicine organization?
Yeah, really good questions, Guillermo. And it's such a lovely story. And I love telling the story of how this came about. And I'm happy to share it today on the podcast. So I'm going to take you back a few years. I think it was around 2016 or so. I was at a leadership event. And it's always in those moments where you step away from your busy life and the kids and work, where you are most able to come up with inspirational ideas and moments of clarity in your life. And so I was sitting in the middle of this, it was like an emerging leaders program for young ophthalmologists in Toronto at the Rotman School of Management. And, a few months before, one of our colleagues, Dr. Elena Frick, was murdered in Toronto. And yes. I'm sure you remember that. It was all over the news.
It was shocking. Yes.
And we have a relatively large social media presence, Women in Medicine in Canada. We have a very large group that supports each other online. We were at the time probably around 6,000. Anyway, you could tell when this happened, the morale was really low. I mean, there was burnout, on a different level than what we're seeing now with the pandemic. It was early burnout. There was a lot of contract negotiations with the government. Everyone was feeling really quite exhausted with work and life. And then Elena was murdered. And it was just such a devastating time for our community. And so I was sitting in this meeting and I thought to myself, we all do so well supporting each other online. We know each other's names online, but we've never really met. So maybe we should just try to get together and just provide some support for each other. That has nothing to do with medicine, it's just for life. So I left the room actually immediately when I had the idea. I left in the middle of a session and I called my husband and I said, what do you think if I organize a little get together for women doctors. And he said, oh yeah, that's a great idea. Why not? So I waited till I got home the next day and I posted this idea on our Facebook group, and I went to bed and I woke up the next morning and I think there were 300 comments.
Wow.
So then I was like, okay, I'm going to do this thing. And so I called a bunch of venues in Ottawa. I spoke to the COS, actually. That was before I was on the board, but I spoke to COS to find out a little bit, how they organized, because I know they helped a lot with Sally Letson. I went to visit a few venues, and then I thought, well, I'm going to do it here at the Westin Ottawa. And I gave them my credit card and I said, here's a deposit. And then I recruited a few women to help me. And they weren't women that I knew. They were just women I knew online, but they were not my girlfriends. I purposely didn't recruit my girlfriends because I just knew it wasn't up their alley. It wasn't their thing. So I found a few women that I barely knew. I said, you guys want to help me do this thing? And so that was the initial, that's how it was born. And so I cold called a bunch of speakers. I made a list of wellness topics. I found all the speakers. These women who I recruited were helping me. And we thought, you know what, let's just try to do this and break even. And so if we break even, I'll be happy. My husband will be happy. It'll all be good. Anyways, so our first event launched in 2018. It was in 2018 in June at the Westin Ottawa, and it sold out. We had 550 people. There was standing room only. And so then I knew we had something that was really, really special. And, the feedback that we got from the women afterwards by email and on our evaluations, not only was it something that really touched a nerve, but it actually helped these women in ways that they had not been helped before. Like, we had emails from women telling us they were ready to quit their jobs. They were ready to leave their family. They were in counseling. And they had this weekend where they were just in a room with like-minded women. They felt inspired by the talks about wellness and lifestyle and taking care of yourself and how to have good relationships and parenting. It was nothing medical. It was just about how to be a better you and a happier you. And it really turned things around for a lot of these women. And so based on the success of that event, I thought, well, we need to build a national organization. And I had these friends helping me. So that's what we did. We built a not-for-profit organization. And then we started planning. Literally the next week after the first event was over, I was looking at venues for the following year, and I knew we needed to expand. And so my main partner in planning, her name is Dr. Caitlin Schwartz. She's a family doctor. We went to Toronto and we're like, where's the biggest venue we can get? And so we booked the Westin Harbour Castle for 2019. And Guillermo, in less than 7 days, 2019, CWIM #2 sold out. And we had about 800 women at that event. And
so that's the event. How many women are members of this organization?
Yeah.
Then?
So what we ended up doing is the organization, then we built a leadership council and a board of directors. And so I was the first president to serve, because it was my little baby project. And so, it has the highest number of voluntary paying members of any medical organization in Canada. So when our membership renewal came up, I think it was in June, it's every year in June, we had upwards of 1,600 paying members. And so the organization runs now on its own. Caitlin and I have very little to do with it. We are founding members. So we oversee what happens at the not-for-profit organization. And then we run the conference separately as our side project. And actually the conference has grown so much, even despite COVID, we shifted to virtual and we had over 1,600 people this past June. Yeah. And now we run a longitudinal leadership course for women in medicine. It's a 3-month course, and we've just sold out of the second iteration of that. And we had our first session 2 weekends ago. And in fact, we're launching, this is going to be really great. We're launching a longitudinal CWIM parenting course with expert speakers from across the US and Canada. And that's going to be starting in February. So really, it's become a resource for women physicians in Canada and beyond. We have now participants from all over the US and overseas and the Middle East and Australia. and Europe. And so women look to these events not only to fill their buckets, but really to connect with other women. And I think COVID, in a way, they needed it even more during COVID, which our numbers speak to that, because people are constantly reaching out to us, asking us when registration opens for the next one. They really they need this, it's sort of like their rejuvenation once a year.
Okay, well, let me try to take advantage of having you here, because I mean it's amazing to hear someone describe their eureka moment. Basically, that's basically what it was, and in the context of what you were doing. I mean, talk about a productive meeting when you attended that session, and then what it translated into and the impact you have. So I'd like to dissect it into a couple of things. First, you have mentioned the buckets, and we tend to think in terms of buckets of like entertainment, spiritual bucket, the work bucket, social responsibility, maybe friends and family, keeping healthy. How in these conferences or in your group, how do you kind of divide that specifically for women? How do you fulfill those needs?
The only requirement that I ever had in my mind for the conference was that I really did not want it to be another medical conference.
Okay.
I wanted to fill all the other buckets, Guillermo. Like I didn't want to talk about vascular disease or diabetes. I just wanted the spiritual, the friendship, the home bucket, the life bucket. Those are the buckets that we were focusing on. The first year, I pulled topics. I feel like we had our finger on the pulse of this population because of social media. So the topics that were chosen for the first event really just came from ideas I had sketched on paper. But subsequent years was much easier because people tell us what they need now, right? We have these evaluations, we get emails over the course of the year, we get speaker suggestions. The job is a lot easier now. The whole point of it is these women are juggling so many balls when they're at home. And they wear so many hats. And what I wanted to do is take off all of the hats except for who you are as a person hat and bring that, come into a room with a whole bunch of women who are just like you. And, you can tell there's a power in that space, Guillermo. There are so many tears. There are so many emotions. There's so much that happens in those 2.5 days that is unparalleled in any environment I've ever been to. And this is what all the women also say. This is not like any other event they've been to because of how you feel when you're surrounded by people going through the exact same things as you, just on their own different side of the country.
EyeCan wants to know what you think. Please send your comments on today's episode or any suggestions you may have for topics or features to communications@cos-sco.ca, and we'll try to incorporate them into future episodes.
Hey everyone, it's Ike Ahmed from University of Toronto and Prism Institute, and I listen to the EyeCan Podcast.
As you know, I'm surrounded by women at home. I have my 2 girls, and one of the things so we experienced a few things. We experienced the change in culture, moving from, although my daughters were born in Canada, they grew up a little bit in Mexico before we came to Canada, but our culture within the house was from another country. And always our idea has been, how do we empower them? So now at one extreme, we have women, successful women in medicine who are getting together because they have this need. How do we address it at the beginning? How do we address it with our little girls, with our granddaughters? How do we empower them so that they feel that they can contribute right from the start, as opposed to kind of feeling that void that you set out to really tackle with your project?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there is nothing more empowering to anybody, women and men alike, who are struggling with any aspect of their life. There's nothing more empowering than to know that there are, as a child, that there are people behind you, holding you up, supporting you no matter what. But as an adult, to know that there are other people just like you who are going to back you up no matter what. And so a lot of these women, when they came to CWIM 2018, the first one, they had never met other women who had been through this exact problem that they've had. The microaggressions at work, the difficulties with childcare, the mother's guilt when you go to work and your child is the first one dropped off at daycare and the last one picked up. You know, the issues they have with pumping in the OR in between cases, and they're not supposed to be doing that. Like all of the relationship they have with their husband, whether he's medical or non-medical, or with their partner, whether he or she is medical or non-medical. These are such unique problems that women doctors face. And the minute we showed them that there are hundreds of other women just like you don't even need to know their name. You just walk in the room and they're there. There's this feeling of A, you're not alone. B, if there's something we need to fight, we will fight it together. And we've done that. Like the CWIM organization has had quite a few very large advocacy projects where something was wrong. You know, something was really wrong. And we thought we got to do something about this. And we did. And it was in the media, and we've been successful in our battles because we have such great representation. But just knowing that there is this group of people who are just like you and who are probably going to agree with a lot of what you're feeling, that is the most empowering thing, because you're no longer alone. And in numbers, we have strength, right? The more we are, the stronger we feel. And CWIM really, truly just represents that. We become a unit. All of a sudden, once a year, we become a unit. And then you go back to your regular life and you feel stronger, like you walk a bit taller, you talk a bit louder. Sometimes it lasts 2 weeks. For some women, it lasts a whole 5 months, but we can always tell a few months later, we start getting the emails, hey, when can I register for the next one? Because they just need to feel that again. And I think that is really something powerful.
Okay. And so you hold these events. Do you have like a major conference within once a year, and then you have other events throughout the year as well?
Yeah. So the major conference is in June every year. And it's only in June every year, Guillermo. This is how grassroots this event was. Like I literally took a calendar that first year before I even had a team. And I wrote down all the medical conferences that exist. And then I thought, okay, where's the weekend that's empty and that's not Father's Day or Mother's Day or some other religious holiday or something? And so I picked this first weekend of June. So it stayed that way since. So that's the big event. And then, and then we have this parenting course and the leadership course, and who knows what's going to come. I mean, CWIM has grown. We have admin support now. There's an office, there's a warehouse, because we send these beautiful welcome boxes to our participants. It's really big now, and it's expanding. Who knows how far it'll go? Right now, those are the events that we run, and we have a lot of big dreams for other things.
So, you're involved with the COS, you're involved with a lot of education. We often talk about perceived needs, unperceived needs. So let me frame it in a different way. Many of us who are not women doctors think we're doing a good job, perhaps, supporting our colleagues, our women colleagues, in many different areas, in nursing, in administration, as physicians. What can we do to help? What can we do to help you? What are we missing? What do we think? Maybe we think we're treating you well. Maybe we think we're including you in all the things we need to do. Like, what are some of the conversations that CWIM says, no, this guy thought he was helping, but he was just totally off base? Do you have any examples of things that we could do tomorrow to help the environment in medicine?
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, in our leadership course, we address this quite a bit. In fact, we actually have a session with a lawyer. She's a human rights lawyer, and her session is called "What Did You Just Say?" And it's all about how to, stand up or speak up when something is either implicit or explicitly wrong. I just want to be clear. CWIM, the purpose of CWIM, and when we get together, the messages that are shared are not all about injustices towards women. Definitely not.
No,
it is really just about, it's about our shared experience and how we can embrace what we have and do better and be better and, take care of ourselves. I think women, the more they're empowered by events like this, the more they're likely to speak up if there is something occurring that seems like it could maybe happen in a better way. I think a lot of it, Guillermo, is time and education. It's hard for me to give an example of what everyone can do tomorrow to make it better, but some of the little things would just be, maybe be a better listener, or maybe try a little bit harder to put yourself in the shoes of that medical student who might be a minority, who is facing some sort of a difficult situation and maybe cannot stand up for herself. I really truly think that as time is going by, we are all getting better at that. We still have a long way to go, but you know what? Even in speaking to men who I truly admire and who I love, and I talk to them about, for example, gender pay gap in medicine, they still don't get it. They still bring up the argument, it's because women go on mat leave, or they work fewer hours, or they take longer with patients. I keep hearing the same arguments over and over again. And really, all you need to do is read the literature, because even when you factor in all of those things, there is a massive gender pay gap, for example, in medicine. And I think everybody, not just men, have to just be more open to educating themselves before commenting too loudly on topics that they feel they know about, but perhaps they haven't. Now we have literature, we have data. Julie Silver from Harvard, she's done so much research on gender inequities in medicine. And, it's really worth it to pick up one of her white papers and read through it. But, we're getting there. I mean, it's at least the wheel is turning, and hopefully over time, it will continue to slowly improve. And I think that's the best we can hope for.
Do you see a change in behavior and in the environment in the younger generations? You deal a lot with residents and medical students. Are you seeing that already?
I do. And I think that the hospitals are certainly trying to support that. Our hospital is anyway. I think the more you talk about it, the more people are aware of it. I mean, Guillermo, it still happens, I'm sure on a daily basis. And, sometimes they're tiny little things that happen. And sometimes they're really big things that really shouldn't be happening anymore. Right now, I think we're tackling more of the tiny little things, because the big ones have really officially become unacceptable in hopefully most people's eyes. And, when they do happen, which they still do, groups like CWIM organization will do their best to advocate for what is right. But I think that times are changing, and I wish they would change a bit quicker, but at least it's happening. So, there is a light, I think, at the end of the tunnel.
Have you been able to connect with similar groups? I know you have international members and international attendees, but are there any similar initiatives in other countries, in Europe, in Latin America, in other areas that kind of have a similar idea?
There are some groups in the US. There's a few of them actually who run an event very similar to ours, but they're quite a bit smaller, despite the fact that they're American. One of the main ones that looks a lot like ours, that was born actually at the exact same time as ours, I think there's about 400 or 500 people who go to that event. So it's pretty impressive what these Canadian women have been able to do by coming together every year in troves like this. It's the largest gathering of women physicians in history anywhere in the world right now.
Wow. Yeah. Congratulations.
Thank you.
That is amazing. Now, we hear also a lot about mentorship, and have you gotten to that stage yet where, you're talking about Canadian women in medicine? Does that include students, or is it purely for physicians? And then do you have mentorship programs, for example, for the younger generations?
Yes, part of the leadership council that forms, the main decision-making body of the CWIM organization is a mentorship subcommittee. And in fact, they hold, and they will be holding this June as well, a mentorship breakfast. It happens on one of the mornings of the conference. And in fact, when we were supposed to run live in 2020, but it got canceled because of COVID and we switched to virtual, that mentorship breakfast, believe it or not, Guillermo, was the first additional event that's sold out. So we know there's this need, right? So we have a committee that works on mentorship, and it doesn't have to be, med students or residents to staff. It's staff to staff. It's just physicians who need to be speaking to other physicians on a more regular basis just to help them along. And so I think we're kind of moving away from the word mentorship, but it's a similar type of an idea, and we're trying to set women up longer term. So it's definitely part of the CWIM organization mandate for sure.
Great. How do you deal with industry support, Setareh? Is there any involvement in them, and when you hold the conferences and stuff, and how do you deal with that?
Yeah, that's such a good question. So in the first year, when basically it was my credit card,
Exactly.
yeah, I kind of modeled myself that year after other conferences. So we did recruit some sponsors. Those sponsors were they should be applauded, because they literally were giving me money not knowing at all what they were sponsoring, because it didn't. I was just a woman trying to put something on, and they were so great in supporting us. And so that's continued over the years. I had to really recruit sponsors that first year, but what's happening now is that they're all knocking on our door, and they all want exclusivity at their level of support. And so we're still going with that. We have talked about whether we should phase out sponsorship. It certainly isn't something that we need financially anymore, but I think the women I have to tell you, the exhibit hall at our conference is something you've never seen before. I mean, you have the industry and you have the banks, but then you also have jewelry and socks and makeup, and they are selling like hotcakes, and those sponsors always want to come back every year, because it's like a big shopping spree with 1,200 women. So it's just it's a fun part of the conference that luckily we don't need to rely on anymore, but we continue to do it. We continue to do it because I think our participants actually enjoy a lot of the sponsors that are there.
That's great. So that's amazing. This is like a roller coaster of a conversation with you, Setareh, on how it started and how it has become, how big it has become. But more than anything, it's just the impact it has had at so many levels in the present, but also in the future generations as well. I mean, it sounds like you have your plate full. You're so busy with so many things and trying to fill all your different buckets, right, in life. So what do you do for yourself outside of medicine? What type of books do you read? What type of hobbies do you have? Or what about just you?
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head, Guillermo. I'm a huge reader. If I can find half an hour or 40 minutes at the end of each day, I'm with a book. I'm in bed with a book and my little reading light. I love reading. And, I have 4 kids and they're all under the age of 12. So life is busy, but, CWIM, first of all, I have to say, I love my job. Like, I love what I do. I feel really lucky, Guillermo, because I feel like there is no job I can imagine, a career for me that's more fulfilling. And I'm sure you feel the same way. It's an incredible opportunity to help people on a day-to-day basis. And I wouldn't change my career for anything. But to add to that, I have this, CWIM is truly a passion for me. As you could tell when I speak about it, it comes out in my voice, just a little bit. And so that's a hobby. It's truly a hobby. I mean, CWIM was born from 8 to 11 p.m. Every night in 2018. Like, this is when I worked on it instead of sleeping. And so that is my hobby, to be honest. And then, my kids, my books, the lake, like we have a cottage on the lake. And so that's where I spend my spare time. And friends, friends are the most important thing. And after my family. So there is no other time for anything else. I used to do a lot of other things like painting and all of this, but I'm up at 5 every morning. This is my day-to-day workout. I work out at 5 a.m. every day, and I get my shower in before any of the little ones wake up. And then that's it. And then it's go until I crawl into bed with a book every night. And then it's full. It's just the hamster wheel, but it's a fun hamster wheel to be on.
That's amazing. So what are you reading right now, if I may ask?
So I just finished one of the Ryan Holiday books called Courage is the Key. And I'm reading a book about Stoicism right now. And at the same time, I am reading Hunt, Gather, Parent. It's a parenting book.
Yes.
I have a whole variety of books on my bedside. Some are parenting books. A lot of them are mental models and self-improvement and philosophy. And it's a mishmash. It depends on the night.
Yeah.
And then I also read a lot of books from our speakers, because I'm always trying to recruit new speakers. So I gather all of those books and read through them quickly and try to see who we should have at the conference the following year. So there's some research involved as well.
Well, it's been an amazing conversation with Dr. Setareh Ziai, who, amongst all of her other activities, is the founding member and first president of the CWIM, Canadian Women in Medicine. Setareh, I think, of course, congratulations are in order, but more than that, I think we owe you a great deal of gratitude for what you're doing for Canadian medicine in general, not just for women, but for Canadian medicine. Because I think the impact that you'll have will transcend not just this generation, but generations to come. And it will impact how we as non-women physicians will also address our dealings with our colleagues and hopefully help to create a much better work environment. And we all know that when we do that, well, it translates into more collegiality, collaboration, and better patient care. And so I think we owe you a great debt of gratitude for this project that you are tirelessly doing. So thank you so much for coming to the show and, coming to the show. You're a co-host. Thank you for letting us have you as a guest. And it's been great having you, Setareh.
Thanks so much, Guillermo. Thanks for having me. And thanks for letting me, tell the story again. It always excites me. And sometimes when I think about it, I still can't believe what has happened in the past 5 years. And I'm always happy to share. I want to say hello also to all the women listening who our ophthalmology cohort at CWIM has grown every single year. And I know a lot of you are now devoted CWIM fans, and I want to thank all of you for all of your support. And thanks, Guillermo. Have a great night.
Thank you. And thank you to our listeners as well. Good night.
Bye. Here's what's coming up on our next episode.
Hi, I'm Dr. Ening Struby. I'm an associate professor at Queen's University in pediatric ophthalmology and strabismus. I've been there for about 12 years, and I'm thrilled and honored that pediatric ophthalmology and strabismus is being highlighted in this podcast. So thank you to the hosts for inviting me.
EyeCan wants to know what you think. Please send your comments on today's episode or any suggestions you may have for topics or features to communications@cos-sco.ca, and we'll try to incorporate them into future episodes.
The EyeCan Podcast has been made possible by support from MD Financial Management and Scotiabank, proud financial partners of the Canadian Ophthalmological Society and Canada's ophthalmologists.
Thank you to the Canadian Ophthalmological Society.
The EyeCan Podcast is written and directed by Eric Johnson and produced by John Allaire from Allaire Strategic Works.